little bit of poetry today together. It's still winter. I'm still getting cozy in my pajamas, my flannel and fleece pajamas. Okay. Because of copyright, I'll have to only read a little bit and then talk about it a little bit. But here we go. I got some coffee and poetry. Well, stuff to do with poetry. This is The Art of T.S. Eliot by Helen Gardner, a searching evaluation of Eliot's masterpiece for Quartets. I'm just going to open it anywhere. No, I'm not actually going to open it just anywhere because it's already someone writing about something else, so I don't want to get it too complicated that way. Poetic, Chapter 3, Poetic Communication. So what's the best? Is this? Okay, here, how about this? Oh, goodness. I'm going to start coming on to video fancy soon. I'm so, winter, just whatever. Okay, I'm just going to go on. Poetic communication. Although the word is common to all, most men live as each had a private wisdom of his own. Heraclitus. I'm not pronouncing that right. That doesn't sound right. Anyway, I'm going to just carry on from there. Oh gosh. The difficulty or obscurity which many readers feel in Four Quartets is inherent in the subject and is not the fruit of a deliberate intention on the part of the poet. He is not intentionally writing obscurely in order to mystify or to restrict his audience to a few like-minded persons with special training, but is treating a subject of extreme complexity, which is constantly eluding formulation in words. Mr. Elliot is, in his own words, occupied with frontiers of consciousness beyond the words fail, though meaning still exists. The critic of Four Quartets is still a problem comparable to that which confronts the musical critic in Beethoven's last quartets, which appear to be attempting to express something which even music can hardly render, and tempt whoever tries to analyze them into using language which seems remote from music. Mr. Eliot has not at the back of his mind an idea or an argument which could have been expressed quite simply, in which he is purposely disguising. These poems do not begin from an intellectual position or a truth. They begin with a place, a point in time, and the meaning or the truth is discovered in the process of writing and in the process of reading. That's really interesting because just yesterday I was learning and reading that I didn't really realize that the essay writing format is not universal. It just hadn't occurred to me before, but yeah, there's definitely an Anglo-Saxon, a French, if we're talking about like essay writing as a style, particularly, for example, Anglo-Saxon like a very direct up front in the beginning and then laid out clearly. Let's say we're French, they like it to be kind of a little more open, and you're discovering as you go, and you kind of at the end apply directly give your point. And in like China, it sounded very parental to me. There's like feminine, masculine in French, and then English, and then familial in China, where they said they have a kind of a style that's like the 8-point style, and they have like 8 points, and they set it all up, so it's like sounds very encompassing. And then I tried to look up Africa, but I didn't find that much on it, probably because of accessible history I have for like colonial French and then pre-colonial. So, and I think like in many countries, oral history and oral narration or whatever, however you want to word that, was more predominant. And, you know, anyhow, I find this interesting because now she's talking about in the poem. I don't know what she was saying earlier. Maybe she was saying someone or some people had said he was purposely being, difficult to make his poem understood. But, and then is saying, no, actually, what he's doing is just allowing the reader to discover the point and the truth as the story goes on, or the poem goes on, and not being direct. I mean, that's it. Let's keep continuing. They begin with a place and a point in time, and the meaning or the truth is discovered in the process of writing and in the process of reading. Each poem gathers up into itself all that has been said before, and communication becomes easier as the whole poem proceeds. That Mr. Elliot is moving towards meaning and not starting from it is shown by the comparative simplicity of little guiding. When placed beside Burnt Norton, when published alone, it seemed almost impenetrably obscure and is much easier to understand when one has read the remainder of the sequence. But Little Gilding could be understood by itself without reference to the preceding poems, which it yet so beautifully completes. There is progress through the four quartets towards an easy commerce, a freedom in communication which does not necessarily make Little Gilding in its clarity a better poem than Burnt Norton in its obscurity, but does give us a sense of completion, that what was to be said has now at last been said. I kind of wished it was going to be one bit kind of just analyze, and I didn't fall upon that. But we could leave that at that for that. I don't have to go on. I have two other books I want to just pick up on. I'm sorry, I should have wore something fancy for my video. But, some of my videos are not really about the visual. I mean, sometimes they are about the visual, and sometimes they're more about the auditory. This one's more about the thoughts and the reading. Anyhow, get to the point. My point is that everyone's like a snowflake. Everyone's so unique, right, in their thinking process, and what has meaning and value to you and how you interpret things. So when we're trying to understand another person or a piece of writing from someone, we're starting with how we interpret the world, and then we're trying to read and understand their interpretation of things, and that's not easy. It's really not easy to do, because we're not inside them. I mean, the more you get to know someone, it's usually easier, but sometimes it's not, because then we start assuming things, and that just can muddle up the truth of the person's experience they're trying to express. Okay, so we have a little foundation. Let's see how we can interact that foundation with, I have 4 of the books. I also got, let me just go one by one. The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur. Okay, this is poetry particularly, so I'm just gonna go with this more visual one because, it's gonna be fun to show you it too. Ready? I am made of water. Of course, I am emotional. It's amazing. When I look at this, I suddenly see the word emotional and I think, what does the word emotional mean? If you look in the dictionary, what are the Latin roots? Actually, motion. 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 A-L. Like emotional. And so we have an image of her floating in the water. And these patterns are all mathematically accurate because they've just been, I believe they've just been repeated two or three times. I am made of water. Of course I am emotional. So this sounds like in a response because she said of course. So looks like someone is asking, are you emotional? Perhaps. And she says, of course I am emotional. And to me it sounds like she's really being quite defensive, but maybe that's not it. Direct? Maybe she's being direct. It sounds like she's being direct. Even of the word of course. Of course. Of course is also like we have a course to take. You have a road to go down. You have a course. A course is, because in English, obviously, we have many meanings for many words. But in this case, you can also say, of course I am emotional. Of course, meaning the course of the journey, and emotional, but motion, meaning I'm going on a journey. Yes, I'm in motion, and I'm already on course, and it's me. And the verb is am a verb? I am? No. Emotional is the verb, I guess. But she is starting off with, what I just wrote in the other book. She had said that he was starting from a place and he wasn't being direct right away. So she's starting from a place too, and her place is I am. That's a sense of who and what and where all in one, right? Like this is where I'm starting from, me. And what am I doing? I'm in motion on this journey. It's like she was blamed or something and she said, well, I'm on a journey. I'm riding on this journey and I'm in motion and it's an experience I'm having. So it sounds like she's kind of justifying her experience, which I think she did very eloquently, actually. She's gentle but direct. She's logical, but thoughtful and responsive. She stated, and then and even just stating something so simply, it actually produced a lot of complex and complexity in the way I think I could look at it even. And I think I could probably go on because of the way, the shape of the poem, and then, I can kind of go on with it. And that's what good poetry is. It's not simple. there's much richness and complexity in there. So let's continue on. We got William Blake and the Politics of Vision by Mark Schorer. Okay, so same thing. Ooh, look at that. The woman taken in adultery. Newton, all that we saw was owing to your metaphysics. Anyways, we got some pictures. I didn't know we'd get some pictures, but we did. So, same thing. I don't want to go crazy reading just anywhere because it's already tricky to start just reading in the middle of nowhere. But again, I'll start by chapter 8. The definition dramatized. Oh, that sounds like a poem already. Okay. 3 facts had by now combined to make of William Blake a poem who was to go beyond the ordinary resources of poetry in order to create a system. These facts derived directly from 3 sources: his temperament, his operation on his tradition, and the place of his tradition in his time. The first was original sense of prophetic self-importance, a point of view that was reinforced by the newly developed rationalizations about reason, energy, genius, and the poetic character. The second, that what he had said to say, could be said only with great difficulty in ordinary ways, but with relative ease in a system of mythological metaphor. The third, that is, could be said clearly only with danger to himself, that the metaphor would conceal it and save him. Okay, between 1791 and 95, Blake wrote the symbolic series that formalized what was to become his characteristic mode of expression, a group of 8 poems that form a coherent narrative. Wow. And of which only the conclusion is fragmentary. These poems embody in allegorical figures Blake's revolutionary doctrine as he had developed it through the marriage. They push back still further, or at any rate define more exactly the boundaries of causation. The matter of causation complicates an exposition of poems, for by the time Blake came to the first chapters of the story, the book of Urizen and the book of Los, L-O-S, and these were among the last parts to be written, he was no longer expounding a single or even double, but a triple doctrine, cosmogolan, triple doctrine, my gosh, historical and psychological, in a single symbolism. It is impossible to separate one of these completely from the other, yet the historical and the psychological are more interesting than the cosmogonal, and we shall emphasize on them. Okay, and now I think someone's just kind of like, okay, let's carry on. It is hard to know how literal Blake's cosmogonal intentions were. Urizen and Los deal with the separation of the eternals, their fall from unity, and the subsequent creation of Earth and Adam. They also tell of the disruption of the individual's innocence and his subsequent confusion of spirit, his externalization of what is properly inner, the macrocosm of microcosm. Yet the macrocosm is also Blake's method of exploring the microcosm, that is nowhere more clearly shown than in his use of the fall. The biblical fall of man points to the dawn of consciousness as a curse, Young wrote. And as a matter of fact, it is in this light that we first look upon every problem that forces us to greater consciousness and separates us even further from paradise of unconscious childhood. Yet he is not thinking of Blake Yet he has stated as precisely as possible the value of Blake's symbol. One cannot ask for a better explanation of the question in the motto of "Thou who refuse to fall" than this: that the denial of a problem will not produce conviction. On the contrary, a wider and higher consciousness is called for to give us the certainty and clarity we need. I'm going to stop there for a moment. I'm going to come back because we're getting to a bit of a stanza. It's funny because I was just thinking about today. I remember when I was young, I had a memory that popped up today. There was a moment of, I think I was outside my house in the yard, and I had collected rocks, and I had this notion I was going to do something with them, and was going to express and share them out in the world, possibly have an enterprise. And I was in my element. I was like in my fullness in this sense in the world in that moment. And there was an adult, and this adult, what is that cartoon where they never show Muppet Babies cartoon from the 90s? Oh my God. Yeah, there was no face to this. There were just legs in this memory. I just see tall, long legs, and I don't see, who it was. I don't think it was pants. That's all I can remember. But this adult, I was aware it was an adult. I remember them, I don't know what was said, but I understood from them that what I was thinking was incorrect. Kind of like the Little Prince when he's doing a drawing and the adults don't understand it and they keep saying, well, that's just a hat. And he's like, no, it's not a hat. It's actually this, and that. And nobody could see it but him. And so it was kind of like a moment of that. It was going from my whole world to hearing a bigger person tell me, no, this is not possible in the world that I know about. And I know more about this world than you because I'm so big. And so what I say is the law. It's something along the lines of that. But I kind of like what he was just saying in here. Definitely relates to it. He was just saying that, his poem was kind of trying to describe the inside, the inner life. And he compared it to childhood in this moment. He said, as a matter of fact, it is in this light that we first look upon every problem that forces us to greater consciousness and separates us even further from paradise of unconscious childhood. Like it's like you're a child and you're kind of in a paradise consciousness, and then some problem forces us a greater consciousness and separates us from the childhood paradise. Something like that. Okay, so I related that to a thought I had today, I'm kind of validating what he's saying in real life, not let alone in fictional poem. Well, fictional, artistic. I'm going to carry on. Blake's fall is the act whereby man moves from his pristine unconsciousness into self-consciousness of experience. He finds himself in a situation in which he is aware of his separate impulses and of their conflicts, and the transcendence of experience lies in his reintegration and the achievement of a higher consciousness that is without the strife of the middle state, but is also aware as first was not. This theme Blake presents in cosmogonal terms. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right, but he resolves it in historical terms These poems begin with the fall of angels, but they end with the French Revolution. Oh, Lord. Now we're away from heaven to angels to political uproar. Okay, let's see. We're almost there. In them, Blake formalizes his method. That method may be different, most simply, as one that employs a form of the faculty psychology in order to overcome it. An easy representation of the method is in the lyric, "My spectra around me, night and day," which was written about the 1800s. It is a useful introduction because all that is necessary to understand it is the knowledge that the spectra is the dominating rational part of the individual and the emanation is the outcast imaginative portion. We're going to just stick with him and go with it. It's obviously a whole book and I'm just getting the class. But I am going to get to read some Blake now. I'm going to show you what it looks like first before I read it. Like so. Okay. My spectra around me night and day. Like a wild beast guards my way. My emanation far within weeps incessantly for my sin. A fathomless and boundless deep. There we wander. There we weep. On the hungry craving wind, my spectra follows thee behind. Dost thou not in pride and scorn feel the tempest of my morn, and with jealousies and fears fill my pleasant nights with tears? ? When wilt thou return and view my loves, and them to life renew? ? When wilt thou return and live? ? When wilt thou pity as I forgive? ? Never, never I return, still the victory I burn. Living 3 alone I'll have, and then dead I'll be by thy grave. Through the heaven and earth and hell, thou shalt never, never quell. I will fly and thou pursue, night and morn the flight anew, till I turn from female love and root up the eternal glove. I shall never worthy be to step into eternity, and to end thy cruel mocks, annihilate thee on the rocks, and another form create, to be subservient to my fate. Oh, poor lad. It's so sad. But it was a different time. And it was his moment. I was going to go back to reading just a little bit and then we'll chat about it. I know I'm already at 28 minutes. I don't even know if I'm going to post this. This colloquy, this colloquy has something of the stark and sinewy beauty of the Gothic debate, whose logic up to a point is supports, and whose feeling it approximates in its description of the way the reason hounds and exhausts one. Its theme, too, up to a point, is the old one, the tortured duality of man, but it departs from the old theme in its determination to root up the infernal grove, which is to say that their duality is a condition into which men split themselves, and then they can another form create. I'm going to continue a little bit more because the sentence is good. This is the theme of all Blake's prophetic poems. Okay, there we go. And their method is in essence that of the debate between the warning dual elements of man. For readers today, all this is more complicated than it is complex. The fact to keep in mind as Blake amplifies his method is the importance of point of view. Everything that happens here happens in the universe as constructed under the necessities of Urizen. And therefore, most assertions that are made in and about this universe are mistaken or partial. The theme of the diverse life is stated at once in the preludium of Urizen. I'm just going to read one more little stanza. Of the primeval priest's assumped power, when Eternals spurned back his religion and gave him a place of the north, obscure, shadowy void and solidarity. I'll stop there. Wow. So, gosh, I'm going to try to relate her poem to Williams. I guess she's describing, there was an element of defenseness. There was like an angst a little bit in her poem, I found, because she said, of course, meaning it should be assumed, which is kind of an odd thing to kind of normally say, but I'm going to have a honey candy. It's going to be summer next week, okay? I'm going to be in a whole other look. Even Charlie is wiped out. Okay. But William is describing the journey to me in a very fearful way. So she's not talking about fear, but maybe she's writing the poem out of fear, because she's like, I'm afraid that what you think of me, or afraid of what I've expressed to you, afraid that you're going to be disturbed by it. And she basically says, I'm expressing to you that I've been disturbed by something on this journey. That's why I'm saying, of course I am, something is going on, emotion. And she's not talking about joy in that moment. She's not talking about joy, because I can be joyous. It's an expression of affirmation of life. So on that point, and her drawing is actually quite life affirming. So there's already a relation to Williams, because he was talking about the knowledge of heaven, but he was kind of expressing his experience of an emotion that was possibly similar to her. She didn't tell us exactly what emotion she was feeling, but I got the sense that there was an angst in it. William, did he tell us about his emotion he was feeling? He didn't say what the emotion exactly was, but it sounded like there was a little bit of angst, but not, he wasn't trying, he was also stating to prove something. But he was definitely using more theology, I guess, and hers seemed to outwardly look like using nature more. So I mean, if we say create, the creator or the created, they were both using the symbolism of creation to express their disturbance. That seems to be quite fitting. I mean, even if you look at the picture, she has a picture of flowers, so it's just natural, and he has a picture of, like, looks like a god in heaven. It looks like a thunder and sun behind it. And hers, like, the petals are quite open, and there's a bend in it, so it's already in kind of a disturbed motion, although it's beautiful. And he's in emotion, and the colors are kind of disturbed. So there I have compare to contrast. Lastly, definitely not leastly, I'm not going to pronounce it properly either, but Nupamine, The Cure for White Ladies by Leanne Betasamosake Simpson. Okay, I'm going to open. Okay, and just read the page. I think she has, oh, no, that's the middle of a poem. And it's a 3-page poem. I'll just read the one beside it. And it looks like this. There is nothing Ninatig hates more than coming to visit me. Frozen is a panic attack for them. They hate being on water and on ice, and they've only made the trip once so far, and I love them to pieces for trying. By the time they get here with the damn shopping cart, they're so upset all they do is 2 strokes of a back rub, and then they have to get off the water and back onto dry land. Wow, already here, if I'm relating to what I've just been reading, T.S. Eliot and Rupi Kaur. Actually, I gotta make sure, William Blake and Rupi Kaur. And we started with Helen from the T.S. Eliot, and she was talking about, I forget now how the book I started on. What did we say from T.S. Eliot? Poetic communication. Oh, that was an introduction more of how of interpreting poetry and poets and where they're coming from. Right. I'm going to keep that in mind as I talk about this poem. Yeah, this is my interpretation. I felt like Blake was kind of stating in a very formalized way the rules of law he believed and the challenge of that. Rupi was also stating the laws that she believed, the laws of motion and nature. But her tone was expressing to the other with she had to express to the other almost. She didn't want to, it sounded like. And here, it's almost like she's allowing you to hear her thoughts. By a third person, but still doing it to express something to you. And what she's expressing sounds like she's talking about nature. So going back to Rupi and water, here she's talking about frozen water. and the disturbance of the motion from the water to the dry land. And how overwhelming that experience could be. She's talking about consoling in my opinion. She's talking about consoling the other on being distraught, but that the other is still able to swim with it by the back rub, even though it's so upsetting. She's expressing how they're so disturbed, and she's empathetic and sympathetic with them. It's like she mentions a 2-rub movement on the back, and that could seem like very, very small expression. But that's kind of the point, that she's showing that even though it's, so awful kind of thing, they're still able to do that. Is there angst in this one? The word damn, I think that's the point of angst for this one. By the time they get here with the damn shopping cart, they are so upset. All they could do is 2 strokes of a back rub. They hate being on water and on ice. I love them to pieces. So there is an expression. There's the word hate twice. There's more hate than love in this poem. But because it sounds like it's not speaking directly. Yeah, it's true. It sounded like Elliot was Blake was speaking more direct. Rupi was a little less direct. And here, even more less direct. They're all talking about a disturbance from using possibly metaphors of nature. To describe an experience, and leaving to the readers to try to capture or get the gist of it, get a sense of what they're expressing. Interesting. Blake's poem was very controlled, stanzas of the same exact amount of words and sentences, or rhythm structure in I don't know what kind of poem that's called. There's a certain name for it, but his is very formal that way. Hers was organized 1, 2, and 3, like small to big, but still all from the left, from writing from the left out. Almost 3 separate sentences. And this is like one ongoing paragraph. if I describe a little bit of physically the difference between those three for me, I'll use my biased, subjective viewpoint, which I've already been doing this whole time, but I'll add on another layer. So it's definitely only my perspective from whatever knowledge I have of the world, which may be accurate or inaccurate. Anyway, it's like a warning. I'm gonna stereotype culture a bit, but sometimes like you need words to like unpack things, and cultural words are come into play sometimes when you're unpacking literature. Who wrote it, where it's from, to who, why. Anyway, Blake was British, I believe. Rupi is Indian, but I don't know. I think she lives in America, possibly. Pretty sure. And Leanne, I believe she's from America, if not Canada. So as Anglo-Saxon, to be very direct and have a very formal that we know in our post-colonial life, which has been dominated a lot by that structure. Going back to the idea of the essay writing I was talking about, very direct and organized, systematic that way. Maybe the people have also been organized that way and speak that way. If I go to Rupi, hers was all organized by the left and then prioritized from small, medium, and big. But then a whole bunch of imagery underneath it. To me, I'm just, my brain's going to find reasons to believe or express or understand these, but put ideas onto. But if you have a country of a billion people, you've got to keep hyper organized. But since they don't, well, there's not just one God as a main religion there, unlike in Christianity and the Anglo-Saxon world, which is one God, so it's one way. I'm interpreting hers as having to stay organized, however, with the flow of something much bigger and allow for some movement. I mean, it's a lot of people. Hence the imagery of that's not as kind of blocked out and direct, unlike Blake. And she's a bit more revolutionary than traditional in general. And then if we go to Leanne, one big paragraph, my first impression from that is just like tribe, reserve, all together, family, related, blood. Like there is no separation besides the words. And it's like, and her poem really to me talked a lot about the we, the us, like my people, my family, this is the experience of us together and the difficulties that we're carrying and I'm observing them carry. Yeah. So we all live on this planet and live in nature and have different ideas of the creator and then have a different rhythm of how we're expressing our part of our journey that is a little bit more difficult. And, that's what we humans usually do when we have difficulties. We need to find a way to express that sense or that emotion or that feeling or that thought, or that idea, because it's heavier. And when we're light and happy, like a sunshine, it's easier just to stand and flow and not even have to express so much, just to be. So I guess it's easy when we're just being. And we have to unpack when we're heavy in order to learn and then get motivated to take actions to make things better. That, my dears, is my poetry reading of the day. And I am looking to write a poem this weekend with a friend, so co-creating a poem. And so hopefully I'm going to share that with you soon. I just feel like this time is really right for poetry, with all the craziness going on in the world and all the unknown and going into the future. It's kind of a time to play with ideas and thoughts and express things in possibly in non-linear ways, non-traditional ways, or more creative ways. I think there's always golden periods for poetry and civilization and humanity, and I think we are about to come into another one. I remember when I was quite young, I think I won't say when, but when I was younger and when I was a teenager, there was a time, bit of a juicy time for poetry. I used to go to this place called the Muse. It was so cute. There was this cafe in my town, and run by younger people, and I remember it was all dark in there, and they had all sorts of chairs, and there was a little stage, and tea was a really big thing back then, so they had all sorts of like strawberry and all sorts of fruity and different teas, and people would go up and read poetry, and the name was called the Muse, right? So but I remember that being a really good period for expression and of changing times. So I encourage any and all of you to write some poetry, whether it's one word, one line, one image. If you've never done it or if you've done it before, just pick up a pen, see what happens. Why not? Sometimes trying something new like that helps to make new connections with yourself and the world. Who knows what can unroll and happen from there. Okay, my dears, if you have listened to this extremely long video, I congratulate you for your continued patience and loyalty to believe I'll actually have something interesting enough to say that you'll listen. Okay, dears.